During Sunday dinner, my 6-year-old daughter asked, "Mommy, can I have some of Grandma's special candy?" I raised an eyebrow. "What candy, Linda?" My husband chuckled. "Spoiling her again, Mom?" "It's the candy from the special hiding spot." Lily bounced in her chair. She jumped up and ran to the kitchen before anyone could stop her. We heard cabinets opening. "Found them!" She emerged clutching a bag of peanuts. "These! Grandma's special candy." My heart stopped. You're allergic. Has Grandma been giving you these?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Every time. She says I'm brave." Mike stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "What the hell?" "Small amounts build immunity," Linda said calmly. The room tilted. Those stomach bugs. Every Sunday night for 2 years, Lily crying about her tummy, the Monday morning fevers, the random hives we couldn't explain. "You've been feeding her peanuts." The words came out like venom. Linda stood up. "You're being dramatic." I lunged for the kitchen, Mike right behind me. We tore through cabinets like maniacs. Behind the flour container, my fingers found it. A notebook. Exposure therapy log. Lily. Written in Linda's perfect handwriting. Mike grabbed it, flipping it open. His face was drained of color. February 15th, day 1. 0.5 milligrams ground peanut in chocolate chip cookie. Mild stomach discomfort as expected. My hands shook. I remembered that night. I raced to the ER at 2 a.m. with Lily's little body covered in hives. "You knew!" I screamed. "You watched us panic in that hospital and you knew." My husband Mike kept reading, each entry worse than the last. March 3rd, 2 milligrams. Vomiting occurred but likely due to excitement from the playground earlier. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling as I scrolled through medical records. "Every single ER visit matches your journal entries." I was helping her. Linda tried to snatch the journal but Mike held it away. "You've made her weak." I was fixing. I pulled up our insurance app. We paid $1,000 in medical bills. $30,000. "Mommy?" Lily whispered from the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear. "Is that why my tummy always hurts at Grandma's?" Something inside me shattered. "The chronic fatigue," Mike said quietly, still reading. Dr. Peterson couldn't explain why she was always exhausted, and the whole time, she was fighting poison. I thought about all those work meetings I missed, the promotion that went to someone else because I kept leaving for emergencies, getting moved to part-time because Lily was always sick, the growing pains that weren't growing pains, I whispered, the night terrors, the food anxiety, you caused all of it. Mike's hands shook as he showed me his phone, her growth chart. She's dropped from 60th percentile to 30th. Dr. Peterson said possible malabsorption syndrome, but it was inflammation. 2 years of my baby's body attacking itself while this woman took notes like she was conducting a science experiment. "Show me page 47, Linda said suddenly, too calm. Mike flipped to it. His face went gray. "Consulted with Patricia regarding parental negligence. Parents refuse to acknowledge child's improving tolerance. May need intervention. Patricia?" I grabbed the journal. At the bottom, in Linda's writing, family law attorney, specializes in grandparent rights. My legs almost gave out. Mike caught me. "You were building a case," he whispered. "Mom, you were going to try to take her." Linda straightened her spine. "You're both hysterical about everything. Someone needs to think rationally about Lily's future." "The autoimmune markers," Mike said, voice hollow. "Remember? The specialist said she's developing autoimmune issues. Unexplained inflammation markers. This is why." Every word was another knife. The doorbell rang. Linda's face went white. "That'll be Dad," Mike said coldly. I texted him. "Funny thing about divorce agreements, Mom. Dad kept copies of everything, including that incident with cousin Tony." "You wouldn't?" The door opened. Mike's father walked in, took one look at the journal in Mike's hands, and his face darkened. "Still playing doctor, Linda? Thought you learned your lesson after what you did to Tony." "Grandpa Joe?" Lily ran to him. "Hey, princess, why don't you go play in your room for 10 minutes? The grown-ups need to talk." 10 minutes. That's all we had before Lily would wonder why Mommy was crying, why Daddy's hands were shaking, why Grandma was packing her things. "She'll need therapy," Joe said quietly, reading the journal. "Years of it. For the trauma, the autoimmune issues, the food anxiety, all of it." Linda reached for Lily's picture on the wall. "You can't keep her from me. I'm her grandmother." "Watch us," Mike said. "And Linda, that call you're getting tomorrow, that's our lawyer." As we walked Linda to the door, Lily called from upstairs. "No more Grandma's house?" My heart shattered completely. No baby, no more secrets, ever. The door closed. I didn't know it at the time, but our words had hurt Aunt Linda, so much so that she was ready to use them to destroy our lives forever. I ran to every window in the house while Mike took the stairs 2 at a time to check on Lily. My hands shook as I twisted each lock and pulled every curtain closed. Joe sat at our kitchen table with Linda's journal spread open, and his face looked 10 years older as he read entries we'd missed earlier. He pointed to a page dated 6 months ago where Linda had written about testing different delivery methods for the peanut powder. Mike came back down and said Lily was still asleep, but he'd locked her bedroom window and would sleep on her floor tonight just in case. We started tearing through the kitchen like people possessed, and I threw every single thing Linda had ever brought into trash bags. Mike pulled out the spice rack and found an old cinnamon container that rattled wrong when he shook it. He unscrewed the lid and peanut powder poured onto the counter, making both of us jump back. I grabbed the vacuum while he checked inside a vitamin bottle Linda had given us for Lily's immune system. More ground peanuts mixed with the vitamins. My stomach turned thinking about how many times I'd given those to Lily myself. Joe stayed that night because none of us could handle being alone, and he showed us his phone with 15 voicemails from Linda. He played one where she screamed about us destroying their family and threatened to call every relative we had. Another message said we'd regret this, and she knew people who could help her get Lily back. I grabbed Linda's journal and started taking pictures of every single page with my phone. Mike set up the scanner, and we uploaded everything to 3 different cloud accounts, plus emailed copies to ourselves. He pulled up our insurance app and started matching every ER visit date to Linda's journal entries, while I could barely hold the papers steady. The The pattern was so clear it made me sick. Every single time Lily got sick matched an entry about increasing the dose or trying a new hiding method. At 3 in the morning, I couldn't sleep, so I called our pediatrician's emergency line and left a long message. I explained everything and begged them to send us all of Lily's medical records immediately. The nurse who called back 20 minutes later promised someone would call first thing and she'd mark it urgent. When Lily woke up at 7, I sat on her bed and tried to find the right words. She asked why Grandma wasn't here for breakfast like usual on Mondays. I told her Grandma had made a big mistake with the special candy that made her tummy hurt. She asked if Grandma was in trouble like when she drew on the walls that time. I said grown-ups sometimes need to take breaks from each other to think about their choices. Her little face scrunched up and she asked if it was her fault for eating the candy. My heart broke as I hugged her and promised nothing was ever her fault. After Lily went back to playing in her room, Mike and I had our first real fight about this whole mess. He kept saying he should have seen it and protected Lily from his own mother. I yelled that I was her mother and missed it too, even though I saw her every day. We both ended up crying on the kitchen floor holding each other. Mike kept apologizing and I kept saying it wasn't his fault while we both knew we'd carry this guilt forever. Joe came into the kitchen and offered to pay for whatever lawyer we needed to keep Linda away. He pulled out a business card for the attorney who handled his divorce from Linda 20 years ago. Then he mentioned he'd kept every single document about what Linda did to Tony back then. He said it was all in a safety deposit box at the bank and showed us the key. Tony had almost died from Linda's treatments when he was 8, and Joe had photos of him in the hospital. Monday morning came too fast, and I had to call my boss about taking emergency leave. She sighed heavily when I said family emergency and reminded me about my recent performance issues. I mentioned potential criminal charges against a family member, and suddenly her tone changed completely. She approved 1 week unpaid, but made sure to mention my already reduced hours twice. The pediatrician's office called back at noon and got us in for an emergency appointment that afternoon. We drove there in silence while Lily played with her tablet in the back seat, asking why we were going to the doctor again. Dr. Peterson's face went white when we showed him Linda's journal, and he immediately ordered comprehensive allergy testing. He kept shaking his head and saying he should have suspected something beyond normal childhood illnesses. Then he wrote us a referral to see Irina Schmidt, who he said was the best pediatric allergist in the state. He called her office himself and got us an appointment for the next morning because this couldn't wait. The whole time Lily sat on the exam table swinging her legs and asking if she'd need shots today. I told her no shots today and helped her down while the doctor wrote out referrals and prescriptions. I'm trying to understand how Linda could watch Lily suffer for 2 whole years while writing it all down like some kind of experiment. Did she really think making a child sick over and over would somehow help her? Back in the car, I called Lily's school from the parking lot and asked for the principal while Mike drove us home. The secretary put me through right away, and I explained everything about Linda feeding Lily peanuts on purpose for 2 years. The principal gasped and said Linda was banned from the school property immediately, and we'd meet tomorrow about a 504 plan. Mike pulled over to text his mom that she couldn't contact us anymore, and everything had to go through lawyers from now on. His phone buzzed back within seconds with a long rant about how we were being dramatic, and she had rights as a grandmother that we couldn't just take away. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Joe, who was already on his way over with boxes from storage. That evening, Joe showed up carrying a cardboard box that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. He set it on our kitchen table and pulled out folders filled with papers from his divorce 20 years ago. The psychiatric evaluation from back then described Linda's boundary issues and her inability to accept medical reality when it came to other people's health. He showed us hospital records from when Tony was 8 and almost died from Linda's treatments that she called helping. Tony had been in the ICU for 3 days after Linda gave him something she read about online that was supposed to cure his asthma. Tuesday morning, we sat in the family attorney's office while she read through everything we brought, including Linda's journal. She recognized Patricia's name immediately and said Patricia took the most aggressive grandparent rights cases in the state. The attorney started making notes about preparing for what she called an inevitable custody battle and said we needed to document absolutely everything from now on. She pulled out her phone and showed us how to use a parenting app that would timestamp and save every interaction. Then she said something that made my stomach drop completely. She suggested we call CPS ourselves before Linda could make any claims about us being unfit parents. The idea of inviting that kind of scrutiny into our lives was terrifying, but she said transparency was our best defense against whatever Linda was planning. I checked Facebook while Mike asked questions about restraining orders and saw Linda had already started posting vague stuff about being kept from her granddaughter. The posts talked about parents who alienate grandparents and how some people don't appreciate what grandmothers do for their families. Mike's phone started buzzing with texts from his aunts and cousins asking what was going on and why Linda was so upset. We realized she was building a narrative to make us look like the bad guys before we could even process what had happened. The attorney scheduled a formal intake call for the next day, where she'd record our entire story and all of Linda's journal entries. She pulled up a checklist on her computer that included getting restraining orders and medical documentation and preparing for false allegations that Linda might make. The list was 3 pages long and covered everything from supervised visitation protocols to what to do if police showed up for wellness checks. Wednesday morning, we took Lily to get her blood drawn for the comprehensive allergy testing that Dr. Peterson ordered. She completely melted down in the lab chair, screaming about not wanting more OEs when she wasn't even sick. The phlebotomist had to call in 2 more nurses to help hold her still while she sobbed and asked why this was happening. I tried to explain that Grandma's special candy had made her sick without scaring her more, but the guilt of putting her through this was crushing. Mike held her other hand and kept telling her she was brave while tears ran down his own face. After we got home and Lily was watching cartoons to calm down, my phone rang with a blocked number. The man introduced himself as Jameson McKenna from CPS and said he was calling to schedule a home visit after we self-reported the situation. His voice was professional, but cold as he explained they had to investigate all aspects, including our parenting abilities. My stomach dropped as he listed everything they'd need to see, including Lily's medical records and our home environment and our ability to provide proper care. He scheduled the visit for Friday afternoon and said both parents needed to be present for the interview. Thursday, our attorney sent Linda an official cease and desist letter by certified mail and email. Within 2 hours, Patricia responded with her own letter, threatening legal action for grandparent alienation and demanding regular visitation rights immediately. The speed of the response showed they'd been preparing this for a while and probably had the letter ready to go. Patricia's letter claimed we were causing psychological harm to Lily by denying her a relationship with her loving grandmother. It accused us of parental alienation syndrome and said Linda had documented years of us limiting her access to Lily. The letter ended with a threat to file for emergency custody if we didn't agree to immediate supervised visitation 3 times a week. Friday morning, we sat in the principal's conference room for Lily's 5:04 plan meeting. The school nurse pulled up attendance records on her laptop and turned the screen toward us. 47 days missed in 2 years, she pointed out, and almost all of them were Mondays. The pattern jumped out like it was highlighted in neon now that we knew what to look for. My stomach churned as I stared at the dates matching Linda's journal entries. Mike squeezed my hand under the table while the principal took notes about new safety protocols. The nurse printed out the attendance report and added it to our growing stack of evidence. Monday afternoon, we took Lily to her first appointment with Kemi O'Leary at the Children's Therapy Center downtown. Lily sat on the floor playing with toy animals while Kemi asked gentle questions about Grandma's house. Grandma gave me special brave candy, Lily said, making a toy elephant walk across the carpet. Am I still brave without the candy? She asked, looking up at Kemi with those big eyes. My heart cracked right down the middle hearing my baby question her own courage. Kemi wrote notes while Lily acted out scenes with the toys, showing how her tummy hurt after eating Grandma's treats. The session lasted an hour but felt like 10 minutes and forever at the same time. Wednesday afternoon, Jameson McKenna showed up at our door with his supervisor for the CPS home visit. They walked through every room taking photos and making notes on their tablets. Jameson checked our food storage, opening cabinets and the fridge while his supervisor counted the EpiPens we'd stationed throughout the house. They inspected Lily's bedroom, the bathroom, even looked in our medicine cabinet. Both of them stayed neutral and professional, but I caught them exchanging looks when they saw the medical bills spread across our dining table. Jameson asked to see Lily's medical records and Linda's journal, photographing every page with his phone. His supervisor interviewed Mike and me separately about our parenting routines and Lily's daily care. The whole visit took 3 hours and left us feeling exposed and judged even though they said we were doing everything right. That same night around 10 p.m., 2 police officers knocked on our door saying they'd received a report about medical neglect. Mike showed them the CPS visit report from earlier that day, while I explained about Linda and the protective order we were filing. The officers looked tired and annoyed once they understood what was really happening. They made a quick report and told us to call if Linda showed up at the house. One of them mentioned this was the 3rd wellness check they'd done that week for custody disputes. Thursday, we finally met with Irina Schmidt at the pediatric allergy clinic to review Lily's test results. She spread the lab reports across her desk and pointed to numbers that made my hands shake. Lily's peanut allergy was off the charts severe, plus she'd developed new sensitivities to tree nuts and sesame from the repeated exposure. Irina explained how Linda's hidden doses had caused Lily's immune system to go haywire, attacking everything as a threat. She could have died any of those times, Irina said quietly. The worst part was learning the damage might be permanent. Irina spent another hour preparing a detailed medical report linking every one of Lily's symptoms to peanut exposure. She showed us how the growth delays, the autoimmune markers, even the chronic fatigue all traced back to Linda's treatments. She printed 3 copies of her report and signed each one, then looked us straight in the eye. This was deliberate harm and medically ignorant, she said. I'll testify in court if you need me. Her report was 12 pages of damning medical evidence that no judge could ignore. Our attorney filed for an emergency protective order that afternoon and called to say the hearing was set for next Tuesday. She warned us that Patricia would definitely show up to argue for grandparent rights at the same hearing. The court clerk had already notified Linda about the filing, so we should expect escalation over the weekend. Mike's phone started blowing up within an hour of the filing. His aunt called Linda misunderstood and said we were being cruel to an old woman who just loved her granddaughter. His brother texted that he'd never actually let Linda babysit his kids because something always felt off about her. The family group chat turned into a war zone with relatives picking sides and hurling accusations. Mike's cousin shared screenshots of Linda's Facebook posts about being a victim of parental alienation. We had to mute the chat after Mike's uncle called us child abusers for keeping Lily from her grandmother. Friday morning, Mike got called into his boss's office at work. Wow, Mike getting called into his boss's office right after all this family drama started spreading online makes me wonder if Linda somehow contacted his workplace. She'd printed out his phone records showing all the personal calls during the Linda crisis. She slid a written warning across the desk and told him to get his home life together or consider whether this position was right for him. Mike tried explaining about the legal situation, but she cut him off, saying everyone has personal problems, but work comes first. The warning went in his permanent file and put him on probation for 90 days. That afternoon, we got a letter from our insurance company denying coverage for Lily's new allergy treatments. They called the therapy protocol experimental, even though Irina had submitted pages of documentation. The rejection letter listed an appeals process that would take months while Lily needed treatment now. We put $3,000 on credit cards that afternoon to pay for her first month of medications and specialized foods. Mike set up a payment plan for the rest while I calculated calculated how many months of groceries that money could have bought. The next morning, Kemi called me at work to discuss Lily's progress after 3 sessions. She described watching Lily inspect every single goldfish cracker for 10 minutes during snack time, turning each one over and asking if someone put something bad inside. Kemi explained that Lily now refused to eat anything she hadn't watched being prepared from start to finish, even rejecting sealed yogurt containers because someone might have opened them. The therapist said this level of food anxiety in a 5-year-old wasn't normal childhood pickiness, but trauma response from 2 years of being secretly poisoned. I left work early again to pick up Lily from the school where the lunch aide reported she'd eaten only 3 bites of her sandwich after checking each ingredient separately. 2 days later, we sat in the CPS office downtown while Jameson interviewed Lily in a special room with toys and cameras. Through the observation window, I watched my daughter clutch her stuffed bear and tell him about the special candy at Grandma's house that made her tummy hurt, but Grandma said she was brave for eating it anyway. Jameson kept his face neutral while taking notes, but I saw his jaw tighten when Lily described throwing up in Grandma's bathroom and being told not to tell Mommy because it would make me sad. She showed him on a doll where her tummy hurt after eating Grandma's cookies and demonstrated how she used to curl up on the floor when the pain got really bad. Jameson asked gentle questions about other foods at Grandma's house, and Lily listed brownies, ice cream, and special juice that all tasted funny, but Grandma said would help her grow big and strong. After the interview, Jameson met with us privately and requested permission to pull all of Lily's medical and school records, plus interview Joe about Linda's history with children. He assured us the investigation was building a clear pattern of deliberate harm, even though the process felt like strangers digging through every corner of our lives. The next week, Joe drove 3 hours to meet with CPS investigators and brought 2 file boxes from his storage unit. He handed over hospital records from 25 years ago, showing his nephew Tony hospitalized 5 times between ages 3 and 7 while under Linda's care for unexplained stomach problems, mysterious rashes, and breathing difficulties that doctors couldn't diagnose. The similarities to Lily's medical history made the CPS supervisor request additional documentation, while Joe sat there describing how Linda always insisted Tony was just sensitive and needed to toughen up. Tony himself sent his adult medical records overnight after Joe called him, and I spent an hour reading about his ongoing digestive problems, severe food anxiety, and 3 different anxiety medications he still takes at 32 years old. His written statement described Linda making him eat foods that made him sick because she believed exposure would cure his weakness, and how she kept detailed notes about his reactions in a notebook she hid from his parents. Reading how he still can't eat certain foods without panic attacks 20 years later made me run to the bathroom and throw up while Mike held the pages with shaking hands. 3 days after that, the school principal called my cell during a meeting to report that Linda had shown up claiming a family emergency and demanding to take Lily home immediately. The office staff followed our new safety protocol and refused to release her, but Linda argued with them for 20 minutes, insisting she had grandparent rights and threatening to call her lawyer. Security footage showed Linda pacing in the lobby, trying to see into classrooms and taking photos of the staff who blocked her access before finally leaving when the resource officer approached. We filed another police report that afternoon and added the incident to our growing documentation folder that now took up an entire filing cabinet drawer. Patricia's formal petition arrived by certified mail 2 days later, 30 pages of legal documents painting us as unstable parents who were alienating a loving grandmother from her only grandchild out of spite and mental instability. The filing twisted every fact, claiming we were denying Lily a vital family relationship, causing psychological harm through parental alienation, and creating false allegations to support our irrational fears. She demanded immediate visitation rights, accused us of coaching Lily to lie, and suggested we needed psychological evaluation to determine our fitness as parents. Our attorney spent 4 hours preparing our response while warning us that judges often sympathize with grandparents even in cases like ours. The emergency protective order hearing came 2 weeks later in a courtroom that smelled like old coffee and desperation. The judge reviewed Linda's journal, the CPS reports, and medical evidence for 40 minutes, while Linda sat across from us with Patricia, whispering in her ear. He granted temporary protection, but also ordered a family evaluation by a court-appointed psychologist, and said Linda could have supervised visitation at a court facility pending the investigation outcome. Our attorney called it a partial victory, but it felt like being punched in the stomach knowing Linda would still get to see Lily even after everything she'd done. The following Saturday, we attended Lily's friend Emma's 6th birthday party at a park where everything seemed normal until they brought out peanut butter cookies. Lily took one look at them and started screaming that they were bad candy while backing away and trying to hide under the picnic table. Other parents stared as I crawled under the table to hold her while she sobbed that Grandma's candy was here and it would hurt her tummy. We left within 10 minutes with Lily clinging to me and several parents whispering about what kind of trauma would cause that reaction in a child. Monday morning, my boss called me into her office where a performance improvement plan sat on her desk outlining my excessive absences, lack of focus, and inability to maintain professional boundaries between work and personal life. She cited 17 different instances of leaving early or missing meetings in the past month and said I had 90 days to show improvement or face termination. I spent my lunch break in my car researching FMLA paperwork while calculating whether we could survive on just Mike's salary if I lost my job because of what Linda had done to our family. Mike found a support group through his therapist that met Tuesday nights at the community center downtown. He went to his first meeting 3 weeks after we kicked Linda out. I stayed home with Lily doing homework while he drove across town. He came back 2 hours later and sat at the kitchen table without saying anything for 10 minutes, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug he wasn't drinking from. Finally, he looked up and told me he'd been making excuses for Linda his whole life. The group leader had asked asked him to list times his mom crossed boundaries. Mike filled 3 pages just from the last 5 years. He realized he'd trained himself to ignore red flags because admitting them meant admitting his mom was dangerous. The next morning, I woke up to find him reading a book about toxic parents he'd bought after the meeting. He highlighted entire pages and left sticky notes with things like, "This is exactly what she does," written on them. That same day, Linda started her Facebook campaign. My cousin texted me screenshots of Linda's posts about helicopter parents ruining kids. She shared articles about food allergies being overblown and kids needing to toughen up. Each post got dozens of likes from her church friends and Mike's relatives. Our attorney told us not to engage when I called her crying about it. She said it would only give Patricia ammunition to claim we were harassing Linda. I had to watch Mike's aunt comment that we were being cruel to a loving grandmother. His cousin shared one of Linda's posts adding that some parents just want attention. I blocked 15 people that week, but screenshots kept coming from friends who wanted us to know what was happening. Mike's support group taught him about flying monkeys, which is what they call people who do the abuser's work for them. That's exactly what Linda's Facebook army had become. 3 days later, we took Lily back to see Irina for her follow-up appointment. The nurse drew more blood while Lily squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. Irina came in with the test results looking serious. She showed us charts where Lily's inflammation markers should be near 0, but were still at dangerous levels. The damage from 2 years of Linda's poisoning had triggered an ongoing immune response. Lily's body was still attacking itself even though the peanut exposure had stopped. Irina explained it could take years for her system to calm down. Some kids never fully recover from this kind of repeated allergic trauma. Mike filling 3 whole pages with boundary violations from just 5 years makes me wonder how many more incidents happened before that. How does someone's brain learn to ignore that many warning signs about their own mother? She prescribed new medications and recommended monthly blood work to track the inflammation. The pharmacy bill was $400 after insurance. That afternoon, Jameson called to say CPS had finished their preliminary investigation. He'd interviewed Lily's teachers, her doctor, and reviewed all our documentation. The state substantiated our concerns about Linda's harmful actions. He was recommending no unsupervised contact between Linda and Lily. He also strongly suggested Linda undergo psychological evaluation before any contact at all. His report would support us in court, but he warned that judges don't always follow CPS recommendations. We got the official report in the mail 5 days later. Reading it made everything more real. Seeing substantiated child endangerment in black and white next to Linda's name felt like validation and horror mixed together. Mike made copies for our attorney and kept the original in our new fireproof safe. 2 weeks later, Patricia hit us with subpoenas for our financial records. She wanted 3 years of bank statements, tax returns, and credit card records. Our attorney explained Patricia was trying to prove we were somehow profiting from keeping Linda away. The theory was so crazy it would be funny if it wasn't costing us $200 an hour to fight. Patricia claimed we were saving money on babysitting by cutting Linda off. She actually calculated how much we would have saved and demanded we prove we weren't pocketing it. Our attorney had to file motions to limit the scope of what we had to provide. We spent 8 hours gathering documents and organizing them the way the court required. Mike had to take a day off work just to deal with the paperwork. The following week, we met with our attorney for deposition prep. She had us practice answering Patricia's questions without getting emotional. Patricia would try to make us angry, so we'd say something she could twist. Our attorney played Patricia's role, asking horrible questions about our parenting. She accused us of coaching Lily and making up the allergy for attention. I had to practice saying, "That's not accurate," instead of screaming like I wanted to. Mike struggled with questions about his childhood with Linda. Patricia would definitely ask if Linda ever hurt him to establish a pattern of false accusations. Our attorney taught us to stick to facts about Lily and not get pulled into other topics. She warned us Patricia was known for marathon depositions that lasted all day. We'd need to stay calm for hours while Patricia tried every trick to break us. The court-ordered mediation happened 3 weeks later in a gray conference room that smelled like old carpet. Linda sat across from us with Patricia while the mediator tried to find common ground. Linda insisted she'd been helping Lily build immunity based on research she'd done online. She pulled out printed articles about exposure therapy that had nothing to do with life-threatening allergies. The mediator asked if she understood she could have killed Lily. Linda said we were being dramatic and Lily was never in real danger. She claimed the hospital visits were from other issues and we were blaming her unfairly. When the mediator asked Linda to acknowledge any wrongdoing, she refused completely. Patricia argued we were denying Lily a loving relationship with her grandmother over a misunderstanding. The mediator ended the session after 2 hours, writing in his report that reconciliation seemed impossible without Linda accepting responsibility. That weekend, CPS filed their official report with the court. It recommended Linda have no unsupervised access to Lily and undergo psychiatric evaluation before any contact. They used the phrase significant risk of continued harm 3 times in the document. Jameson had been thorough, documenting Linda's lack of remorse and refusal to acknowledge the medical danger. The report also noted the pattern with cousin Tony, showing this wasn't an isolated incident. Our attorney said it was the strongest CPS report she'd seen in a grandparent rights case. 5 days later, I came home from grocery shopping to find a gift bag on our porch. My hands shook as I recognized Linda's handwriting on the tag. Inside were Lily's favorite toys from Linda's house and a note saying, "I forgive you for keeping her from me." I called the police while Mike photographed everything without touching it. The officer who came said it was technically a protective order violation. He took the items as evidence and filed another report. We'd been through this so many times that the officer knew our case number by heart. He told us to keep documenting everything because judges needed to see patterns of violation. That night, Joe called Mike to say he'd testify at the final hearing. He knew it would destroy what was left of his relationship with Linda's family. Her siblings were already calling him a traitor for giving us the divorce divorce documents. But Joe said protecting Lily mattered more than keeping peace with people who enabled Linda. He'd been silent when Linda hurt Tony 20 years ago. He wouldn't make that mistake again. He'd already written his statement about Linda's past behavior and was ready to say it under oath. The night before the final hearing arrived faster than we expected, and Mike and I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by notes and documents while Lily slept upstairs. We went through every possible outcome our attorney had warned us about, from Linda getting supervised visits to the judge dismissing everything completely. Mike kept tapping his pen against the table while we talked about safety plans if Linda got any kind of access to Lily. We agreed that if the worst happened and she got visits, we'd hire a professional supervisor ourselves and document every single second. Neither of us could sleep that night, just holding each other and checking on Lily every hour like we did when she was a baby. The courthouse was packed the next morning, and my hands shook as we walked through the metal detectors with our attorney carrying 3 boxes of evidence. Linda sat at the other table with Patricia, wearing a soft pink cardigan and pearl necklace like she was going to church instead of fighting for access to the child she poisoned. Our attorney started by laying out Linda's journal page by page on the evidence table, each entry blown up and highlighted to show the dates matching our ER visits. She pointed to specific entries where Linda documented Lily's reactions like a scientist recording data on lab rats. The medical bills came next, printed statements showing $30,000 in emergency room charges, specialist visits, and treatments for mysterious illnesses that Linda had caused. Patricia objected 4 times, but the judge allowed everything since Linda had written it herself. Our attorney then presented the CPS report, reading key sections about the pattern of harm and Linda's refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing during their investigation. The judge leaned forward when our attorney showed the timeline overlay, with Linda's journal entries on top and Lily's medical records below, creating a perfect match of cause and effect. Linda took the stand after lunch, and Patricia guided her through a story about how she'd researched exposure therapy online and thought she was helping build Lily's immunity. She pulled out printed articles from random websites and claimed she was following legitimate medical advice, though none of the articles were from real medical sources. Linda cried softly while saying she only wanted to help her granddaughter be normal and not live in fear of food. Patricia tried to paint us as helicopter parents who were using this misunderstanding to cut Linda out of Lily's life out of spite. She suggested we were the ones harming Lily by denying her a relationship with a loving grandmother who made one mistake. The judge asked Linda directly if she understood that peanuts could kill Lily, and Linda said we were being dramatic about the severity of the allergy. Jameson took the stand next, speaking in his calm, professional voice about his investigation findings over the past months. He confirmed that Lily had told him multiple times about the Brave candy that made her tummy hurt, using the exact same words each time. He testified about finding the hidden peanut products during the home visit to Linda's house after she'd claimed she had none. The judge asked about the pattern with cousin Tony, and Jameson carefully explained the similarities without violating Tony's privacy. He stated that based on his investigation, Linda posed a significant risk of continued harm if given unsupervised access to any child with medical conditions. Patricia tried to shake him by suggesting he was biased because we'd self-reported, but Jameson stayed steady and professional throughout. Irina testified last, and her testimony was devastating for Linda's case, as she explained in simple terms how exposure therapy actually works. She told the court that real exposure therapy for allergies requires medical supervision, blood tests, and microscopic doses that increase by tiny amounts over months or years. She held up a visual showing the difference between a medical dose and what Linda had been giving Lily, with Linda's amounts being hundreds of times larger. The judge asked her about the long-term damage, and Irina explained that Lily now had inflammation markers that might never go away completely. She said Linda's actions could have triggered additional autoimmune conditions that would affect Lily for life. When Patricia suggested Irina was exaggerating, Irina pulled out medical journals and studies showing exactly what repeated allergen exposure does to a child's developing immune system. The judge took a 20-minute recess before announcing his decision, and those were the longest 20 minutes of my life. When he came back, he denied Linda's petition for grandparent rights completely and upheld the protective order for 1 full year. The judge taking 20 whole minutes to think about this makes me wonder what specific parts of all that evidence made him need so much time to process everything. He ordered Linda to undergo psychological evaluation and complete any recommended treatment before she could even think about requesting supervised visits. He used words like reckless endangerment and deliberate harm, making it clear he saw through Linda's grandmother act completely. Linda sobbed loudly while Patricia gathered their papers, and I felt nothing but relief that Lily was safe from her. Within hours of the ruling, Mike's phone started buzzing with messages from Linda's family calling us monsters for keeping her from her only grandchild. His aunt posted on Facebook about how we were cruel and vindictive, twisting the story to make Linda the victim of overprotective parents. Mike's cousin shared articles about grandparent alienation and tagged us both, forcing us to block her and 12 other relatives who piled on. We spent that evening blocking people and trying to shield Lily from knowing that half her extended family now hated us. Some relatives we'd been close to for years chose Linda's side without even asking for our version of events. 2 weeks later, Jameson called to tell us CPS was closing our case with a safety plan in place that included keeping the protective order active. He said we'd done everything right by coming forward, and that Lily was lucky to have parents who fought so hard to protect her. The safety plan included provisions for reopening the case immediately if Linda violated the protective order or tried to contact Lily through third parties. He wished us luck and said he'd never seen such clear documentation of intentional harm in a grandparent case before. 3 months passed before we saw real progress with Lily's eating, but when it came, it felt like a miracle. She sat at dinner one night and ate her entire meal without without asking once what was in it or checking the ingredients herself. Kemi called it a breakthrough moment when we told her at the next therapy session, though she warned us Lily still had months or maybe years of work ahead. The food anxiety Linda had created wouldn't disappear overnight, but seeing Lily eat without fear for the first time in 2 years made me cry happy tears. Our financial advisor looked grim when we sat down to review the damage from this whole situation a week later. Between the medical bills from 2 years of ER visits, the legal fees for the protection order and custody battle, and Lily's ongoing therapy and specialist visits, we owed $45,000. She helped us consolidate some of the medical debt and set up payment plans, but it meant putting off buying a house for at least 5 more years. Mike had to turn down a promotion that would have required monthly travel because we couldn't risk him being away if Linda tried something. We were looking at years of financial recovery from the damage Linda had caused, but at least Lily was safe and starting to heal. Mike found the therapist through his support group, and we sat in her waiting room that first Thursday afternoon, both of us staring at the beige walls and not talking. The therapist had us fill out intake forms separately, and I checked every box about family trauma and trust issues, while Mike's pen scratched across his paper too. She called us in together, and we sat on opposite ends of her couch like strangers, which felt about right since we'd barely talked about anything except logistics for weeks. The therapist asked us to describe what brought us there, and Mike started crying immediately, saying he should have protected Lily from his mother years ago. I grabbed his hand and told him we both missed the signs, but the therapist stopped us and said blame wasn't productive right now. She gave us homework to write down 3 times we'd successfully protected Lily together, and 3 warning signs we'd recognize now that we didn't before. We scheduled weekly sessions and left holding hands for the first time in days. Joe called that weekend asking if he could see Lily at the park since the protective order didn't include him. Mike and I talked it over with Kemi first, who said supervised visits with safe family members could help Lily process that not all grandparents were dangerous. We met Joe at the park Sunday morning with clear rules that he couldn't mention Linda or give Lily any food. He brought a portable easel and watercolors, setting them up near the playground while Lily played on the swings. She was hesitant at first, but Joe just started painting the trees and didn't push her to come over. After 20 minutes, she wandered over to watch, and he handed her a brush without saying anything. They painted side by side for an hour, Joe showing her how to mix colors while I sat on a nearby bench watching every move. When we left, Lily asked if Grandpa Joe could come again next week, and we said yes. The school called Monday morning saying they'd finalized Lily's 504 plan after reviewing all the medical documentation we'd provided. The principal met with us personally to go over every detail, showing us the bright red alert in their system about Linda being prohibited from campus. They'd added Lily's photo to the office bulletin board with a note that only Mike or I could pick her up, no exceptions. The nurse showed us where they'd store Lily's new EpiPens in 3 different locations and confirmed all staff had been trained on recognizing allergic reactions. The cafeteria manager walked us through their new protocols for Lily's meals, including a special tray color and dedicated prep area. We signed the paperwork, and the principal assured us they took this seriously after what happened. I spent Tuesday morning at HR filling out FMLA paperwork while my boss sat in the corner looking annoyed. The HR representative reviewed my documentation from Kemi and Irina, confirming I qualified for intermittent leave for Lily's ongoing treatment. My boss tried arguing that I'd already used too much time, but HR shut her down, explaining that FMLA was legally protected. They approved 12 weeks of intermittent leave that I could use for therapy appointments, medical visits, and emergency situations. My performance plan got adjusted to remove attendance as a metric since my absences would now be protected. My boss left the meeting without speaking to me, but I didn't care because Lily needed me more than this job did. Wednesday's mail brought a thick envelope from Patricia's law office that Mike opened with shaking hands. Linda's apology letter was 3 pages of justification disguised as remorse, saying she was sorry we'd misunderstood her intentions. She wrote that she forgave us for our harsh reaction and looked forward to when we'd realize what we'd lost by cutting her out. The last paragraph mentioned she was praying we'd come to our senses before Lily forgot her loving grandmother completely. Mike wanted to burn it, but I called our attorney instead, who told us to file it with everything else. She said Linda was trying to establish a paper trail of attempted reconciliation for future legal action. We made copies and put the original in our growing legal file. Our attorney suggested we draft a victim impact statement even if we never used it, saying it would help us process what happened. We spent Thursday evening at her office going through every detail while she typed our words. Mike talked about watching his daughter suffer for 2 years while his mother took notes like a scientist. I described the financial devastation and career damage from constant emergencies that weren't real emergencies at all. The attorney helped us quantify everything from medical costs to therapy bills to lost wages and promotions. She said we had grounds for a civil suit worth several $100,000, but understood when we said we just wanted to focus on healing. Having the statement written down felt powerful though, knowing we could seek justice if we ever changed our minds. Saturday dinner was quiet until Lily looked up from her plate and asked if Grandma Linda still loved her, even though she made her sick. Mike dropped his fork and I felt my chest tighten, but we'd practiced this with Kemi. I told Lily that sometimes people who love us don't know how to show it safely, and our job is to protect ourselves while still keeping love in our hearts. She nodded and said she loved Grandma Linda, but didn't want to see her because her tummy hurt there. Mike added that loving someone doesn't mean we have to let them hurt us, and Lily seemed to understand. She went back to eating and actually finished her whole meal without checking the ingredients once. 6 months after that horrible dinner revelation, I looked around our different but steadier life. Lily's weight had climbed back to the 45th percentile, and she only asked about ingredients half the time now. Mike and I weren't perfect, but therapy helped us talk without blame and recognize triggers before they exploded. The medical bills bills still crushed us, but payment plans made them manageable, and Lily's health was worth any price. Joe came every Sunday with art supplies, and Lily had covered our fridge with paintings of trees and flowers, and one small picture of a house with no grandma inside. We'd built new routines and boundaries that kept Linda's poison out, even though her shadow still lingered. The scars she left would last forever, but we were learning to live with them, protecting our daughter one careful day at a time. Wow, what a ride that was. Really awesome exploring all those twists and turns with you. I've been curious every step of the way. Can't wait to do it again. And hey, like the video, it helps more than you think.